Howdy guys, I recently rediscovered my love for mobile games. As such, I've been perusing the App Store for new games to play. Did you know they made a Fruit Ninja 2? Yeah, take that, God. I bet you weren't expecting that, huh? But in the time that I spent away from mobile games, game companies that I'm familiar with started making their own. Capcom, Sega, Konami, they all got in on it, but there's one that I didn't expect to see here. Yeah, no, I must be in some kind of alternate dimension, and I bet I can prove it too. You see, in my universe, I would have never dared touch an RPG, but in this universe, I beat Deltarune. God only knows how much time I have left.
Let me take you back to an important era in Nintendo's history. It's known by various names, but I like to call it the Great Wii U Bashing of 2012 to 2015, a period in time in which people complained about Nintendo's then new home console, the Wii U. I've briefly mentioned this in the past when talking about the Wii U and 3DS, but I have yet to mention the many things that came from the Wii U's failure. For one, they dipped their toes into the plug-and-play retro console biz with the NES Classic Edition. They also collaborated with other companies on Nintendo-themed projects like movies and theme park attractions. But one of the most notable things they would do was enter the mobile gaming business. Something that would have seemed scandalous just a few years earlier was now becoming a reality. But in order to understand how that happened, let's go specifically to 2015. There were some pretty good Wii U games coming out that year, like Super Mario Maker, Splatoon, and Yoshi's Woolly World. But in terms of console sales, it was doing terribly. Remember, the Wii U is Nintendo's worst-selling home console, and this was at the tail end of its production, so it was obvious how things were going for them. Yeah, to keep it short, they were going like shit, so they had to do something fast in order to get the public talking in a good way. So, on March 17th, 2015, everyone would figure out exactly what they were doing. That day, they held a press conference announcing their new partnership with DeNA, a Japanese mobile gaming company. They were going to branch out into the mobile games market, with DeNA helping out the development of most of them. Now, of course, this is the same press conference that announced the existence of their next home console, Project NX, which led Nintendo fans on a completely different journey down the rumor rabbit hole for the next year and a half. But to those who cared more about the mobile games, this came off as,
Hi, welcome to our press conference. We're f***ed.
Now, I say that because Nintendo was quite notorious for refusing to make games or use their characters on any non-Nintendo home consoles, so it seemed like they were on their last legs. And as we'll soon find out, maybe that is why they went this direction. Throughout their partnership, Nintendo published several mobile games, with most of them being mobile versions of already existing Nintendo franchises. I had played many of these games when they came out, so I'd say I'd have somewhat of a personal connection to them. Thus, I'd like to talk about some of the ones that I'm more familiar with, alongside some that I think are still important to mention. So let's begin with our first game, Miitomo. It was announced at an investors meeting in October 2015 before releasing in Japan on March 17, 2016 and other regions on March 31st. And while I wasn't following a lot of Nintendo news at the time, I still managed to come across it on the App Store. I mean, a free Me-based social networking app? How could I not be hooked? Now, obviously, this game is a cut-down version of Tomodachi Life, and if you played that before, it's incredibly obvious. Basically, you play an omnipotent god who physically forms their disciples in their own image. Creating a me is pretty much the same, down to giving them a creepy text-to-speech voice and pseudo-fleshed-out personality traits. Then you dump them in their apartment and you can finally experience what Miitomo has to offer. I can't remember every aspect of what it was like back then, but I'll try my best. One of the main mechanics is that you can answer various questions your me asks about you, which they then tell your friends that you make. You earn coins for every question you answer, and you can buy clothes for your me with those coins. You can also enter a Plinko-style game called Miitomo Drop to win more clothes. The biggest part of Miitomo is the various social features included. You can add friends and visit their apartments in the same way they do in Tomodachi Life. The Me photos, which are spelled kind of like a f***ing 90s Nickelodeon game, are really cool and zany photos you can take with your me in wacky poses. Luckily for me, I don't have to come up with genius photo opportunities because I can steal all my friends' ideas instead. I have even more stock to work with since there's also the fashion and answer centrals. With my newfound fortune of great ideas made by other people, I can make my me stronger and more efficient at becoming friends with people. But that's not enough for me. I want more clothes. Yes, I'm an anarchist, but if I'm out of coins and game tickets, then how can I do that?
Steal it from a corpse!
Around the same time they announced their mobile game romp, Nintendo also announced a new loyalty program, My Nintendo, which would replace the recently discontinued Club Nintendo, and if you don't want to be sad and have an intense panic attack, I'd recommend skipping to here. It was basically a program that let you trade coins received from registering games for neat physical rewards. if you lived in Japan. Over here, you got these bitchin' notebooks, though. The point is that this new service would basically replace the coins with platinum points earned through missions completed in Nintendo's mobile games. So, in turn, if you answered a question in Miitomo, you would earn points, which you could then use to redeem My Nintendo exclusive clothing. Basically, a loyalty program made by and for mobile games. No cool dioramas, posters, CDs. Nope!
Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about how Nintendo shut down Club Nintendo in favor of My Nintendo. I'm instead going to talk about the fact that they nuked Miitomo.
Yeah, that's right, and what will become increasingly repetitive. In January 2018, it was announced that Miitomo would be shutting down, which would later occur on May 8th, 2018, just barely 2 years after it came out. Jeez, it's like curb stomping a toddler. Give it some time to breathe. I know I just complained about how there was basically no content, but it might have helped if they had maybe just a bit more to do. But I suppose it was deemed not that important, an ironic statement considering what would come next. Super Mario Run would be Nintendo's next mobile game release. Now this was the big one. Their most beloved mascot of all time was finally jumping ship to mobile devices, and things were getting heavy. The game was announced not at E3 or something like that, but at Apple's special event on September 7th, 2016. I'd say that's cool, but I can't really bring myself to care. Regardless, it was released worldwide on December 15th, 2016, and luckily I jumped the gun on this one and got it on launch day. In fact, it was the first game that made me realize you could pre-order games on the App Store. On first glance, it just appears to be a mobile version of New Super Mario Bros. Like, I guess that's what it is, but there's a little more to it than that. It's an auto runner, obviously, and was hyped up as the first Mario game that you could play with one hand.
Which is not true at all. Does Mario Kart just not exist anymore?
Now, I have no clue what the plot is, but it ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom being ransacked, buildings and all, a step up from the usual pal around. First, we gotta get Peach back, and in order to do that, we gotta play through the Tour mode. It's a small story mode with 24 levels, kinda like Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. They're all basically small obstacle courses. Mario runs automatically, and you tap the screen to jump and spin in midair. It's definitely made for a mobile game audience, cause Mario vaults over everything. Even the enemies, he glides right over them, and it's your choice if you even kill them or not. I do have to admit, though, that every level is pretty well designed around the control scheme, each managing to apply the more stilted gameplay. The first 4 levels are included with the game, but in order to unlock the rest, you gotta pay a one-time fee of $10. For 20 levels. And it's not like these are decently sized, they're like 40 seconds long max. Even after paying, that adds like 15 minutes of gameplay onto the experience. And wow, I already got Peach back. Well, it's only just begun. You'd think the story mode is the main part of the game, but you would be wrong. The main objective of the game is to spruce up and customize your own Mushroom Kingdom. You could buy new items and buildings from the shop using coins you collect in the story mode, as well as the good old reliable My Nintendo points. But that's still not all. You can unlock new and much cooler buildings by playing Toad Rally. This is the game's online mode, and consists of you racing other people from around the world in the same vein as Ghosts from Mario Kart. Basically, you have to outperform your opponent by doing various things, like performing tricks and collecting coins in order to attract more toads. And you can then use these toads to unlock new building items. So that's about a week's worth of content right there, but my debt to the Mushroom Kingdom Mafia has still not been served. In that case, let me introduce you to Remix 10, a basically endless mode that places you in 30 worlds of remix levels from the story mode. I think it's nice to just drone out and mindlessly play through the levels, which is made even better by the fact that you can mute the in-game audio and play music from whatever app your phone can play music off of, in my case being Apple Music. Definitely a worthwhile inclusion, but still not enough for me to care after a few months of playing. It's got a lot more to offer than Miitomo, that's for sure, which is probably why you can still play it today. So what's next? Fire Emblem Pass. Yeah, it's just Fire Emblem with a crappier art style, and holy f***, how many chapters is this story? Moving on, we have Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. It's a mobile version of Animal Crossing New Leaf, except now you're placed on a campground and have to complete various requests your villagers ask of you. Instead of a house, you have a camper van. You can buy items and clothing, but you could also gather resources in order to trade for new items and furniture, kind of like an earlier version of the crafting in Animal Crossing New Horizons. You also now have to teleport to different areas in order to find resources. Now, this game is also crammed full of a lot of shit I don't care about. For example, Nintendo made 3 different subscription services for the game and like 50 other aspects of the game I completely ignored. You can fish, you can get resources, it's all the same basic Animal Crossing crud you'd usually get. And while I understand a lot of people really like that on a free-to-play mobile experience, I just can't bring myself to care. again. Oh well, maybe we can get our hopes up with the next game I played, Dr. Mario World. Now this came out in 2019, nearly 2 years later, so it's obvious I was losing interest in their mobile games. Frankly, the last time I cared at all was back when Mario Run came out, but I was willing to give a nice look into Dr. Mario World.
You know Virus Buster, the mode that's included with almost every single somewhat recent Dr. Mario and Brain Age game under the sun? Well, that's what it is. Mix it up with some generic mobile game puzzle type games, and that's pretty much the entire experience.
Yeah, no joke there. It's split up into various levels similar to other puzzle games. It's significantly easier too, due to the fact that you now only have to line up 3 of the same color as opposed to the usual 4. I guess their justification for that was adding various obstacles and power-ups to freshen up the experience, or at least that's what I think the purpose is, because it didn't seem to work on me. Adding a multiplayer mode? Nah. Making every Mario character under the sun a doctor by utilizing various gotcha mechanics? No way. I barely made it past the first world within the 2 years I played it before, guess what? Being discontinued in October 2021. That should be more than enough proof that it didn't manage to stick out to anyone at all. I have nothing more to say.
Now, from what we've seen so far, Nintendo rarely went beyond making smaller, free-to-play versions of their existing games, or mobile-friendly twists to existing franchises. But announced in January 2018 would be the absolute magnum opus of the entire Nintendo mobile game saga.
And of course, I'm referring to the ever-divisive Mario Kart Tour. Whenever this was announced back in the day, I could only say one thing. Oh boy, a brand new Mario Kart, this is gonna suck! It took a damn long time for it to come out too, with it being released a year and a half later on September 25th, 2019. I suppose I have to man up now and talk about it. So what can you expect from the average Mario Kart Tour experience? Well, for one, the content issue is practically eliminated. The reason for that is instead of a standard Grand Prix mode with pre-selected cups, there are now regular tours, replacing the general race layout with various tracks, including new and old ones, as well as small challenges. The entire objective of races is changed as well, with the main goal now being to score enough points to increase your rank from 1 to 5 stars. Oh, silly me, I forgot to mention how you control your cart. The simple answer is, you don't. Or at least not very well or cohesive. I know this might not make sense, but just hear me out. Basically, you can choose between either only being able to turn or only being able to drift, with no in-between. I understand that this was done because both couldn't happen with simple swiping mechanics, but if you can't replicate the most basic part of your game perfectly in that way, then maybe it's not a good idea to bring it to that platform. Like, you can get used to it, but I was never able to make it feel like a regular Mario Kart game. Another way it doesn't feel like a regular Mario Kart game is in its free-to-play game mechanics. In order to unlock new characters and carts, you have the option to play this fun little mini-game where you pay rubies, the in-game currency, and swipe this pipe in order to win one of many racers, varying in quality. If you haven't already caught my very obvious drift, this is gambling. Gambling for children, in fact, which is incredibly shady all on its own, but that's not all. There's also the Gold Pass, the game's subscription service.
Man, this dimension's all kinds of huh?
If you pay $5 a month, which is actually more than the base price for Nintendo Switch Online, you get access to free characters, extra races, the 200cc mode, and multiplayer, yeah. While this was later reverted, the original plan for the Gold Pass was to lock multiplayer, the mode synonymous with the entire franchise itself, behind an overpriced subscription service. It's not like the mode's anything special anyways. It was originally not even multiplayer, with it being more like a massive race against ghosts. And again, it wasn't even enough for me to last longer than a few weeks again. And that was seemingly one of the last games Nintendo published under their DNA partnership, as later the next year they announced that they would be significantly scaling back from the mobile games market, and it makes a lot of sense as to why. First of all, one clear reason they were doing it in the first place was because the Wii U was failing to reach anyone in the casual games market, but with the since then massive success of the Nintendo Switch, it wasn't doing much other than another source of revenue. Secondly, and most importantly, almost none of these games were very popular at all, with their user bases dropping off quickly. Me being a massive Nintendo fan and still not caring was probably a bad sign. It's not like they've stopped entirely, however. Late last year, they released Pikmin Bloom, an AR Pikmin game clearly made to recapture the massive success they got from Pokemon Go, which is a very important story that I'll have to leave for another time. But what's come of their games since then? Well, it was recently announced that another one of their games, Dragalia Lost, will also be discontinued within the next year. Even My Nintendo, the service exclusively made for their mobile games, would later shift away from that category, now basically reverting to the old Club Nintendo style format of physical prizes as well as various Switch rewards.
Well, I'd say this was a fun time, but lying is a sin, and I have to be honest, a lot of these games were really boring, and I'm glad I don't have to talk about them anymore. Thank goodness, though. I think we switched dimensions again. I don't care for mobile games, and I hate RPGs, but I do have the weird sensation that I'm a massive Borderlands fan. I don't know what that's about.